Hi, guys. This is Girl Preach Podcast. I am Lexi,
And I'm Danny.
and we are so excited to have you guys back this week.
Hi.
If you are just joining on and this is your first video ever, we are currently going through the book of Jonah and just kind of discussing a few things. You're pretty early on because we're only on chapter 2, but technically this is also going to be the halfway mark because there's only, what, 4 chapters?
hmm
Yep.
Yeah.
So we're going to be halfway done. But we are so excited to have you guys back with us
Yes.
and talking about Jonah.
Yeah. Unless we wanted to do another fifth chapter over what is that book that I was telling you about? Now I'm losing it. Uh the book that follows up on what happens to Nahum. Unless we read Nahum because it, kind of concludes Nineveh's journey. So
I mean, we can probably touch on Nineveh's
yeah.
conclusion.
Yeah.
um, but
I
I
agree.
think the focus here is more on Jonah.
Jonah. No, I agree. Yeah.
hmm
But
Yeah. So last week we kind of talked about how God had commanded Jonah to go tell the Ninevites what they were doing was going to lead to judgment. And basically, Jonah did not want to do that. He did not like the Ninevites, and he was not about to go. He knew that they would turn to God. He knew that there would be mercy there, and he didn't agree with that mercy. So he chose to run instead. And as we jump in this week, we are at the point where Jonah is been swallowed up by a big fish. Not
yeah,
a
last
well,
week,
a big fish.
yeah, last week it kind of left us on a cliffhanger, didn't it?
Yeah. Well, it said that the Lord provided a huge fish to swallow him, and he was in the belly of the fish for 3 days and 3 nights.
Yeah, and that literally is where it ends. And I felt like
hmm
it kind of left us on like a little cliff here. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm excited to jump in.
Okay. Well, I will go ahead and read the 10 verses. There's only 10 verses. And then we can discuss after, okay? So, from inside the fish, Jonah prayed to the Lord his God. He said, "In my distress I called to the Lord, and he answered me. From deep in the realm of the dead I called for help, and you listened to my cry. You hurled me in the depths, into the very heart of the seas, and the current swirled around me. All your waves and breakers swept over me. I said, I haven't been banished from your sight, yet I will look again towards your holy temple. Sorry, I have been banished, not I haven't. I have been banished. Yet I will look again towards your holy temple. The engulfing waters threatened me. The deep surrounded me. Seaweed was wrapped around my head. To the roots of the mountain I sank down. To the earth beneath barred me in forever. But you, Lord, my God, brought my life up from the pit. When my life was ebbing away, I remembered you, Lord, and my prayer rose to your holy temple. Those who cling to worthless idols turn away from God's love for them. But I, with shouts of grateful praise, will sacrifice to you. What I have vowed, I will make good. I will say, salvation comes from the Lord. And the Lord commanded the fish, and it vomited Jonah onto dry land.
So Jonah,
Mm-hmm.
he's in this fish, and I think it's important to note that it's not really a prayer of like deliverance. Like he's not necessarily like begging God to like get him out of this fish. Like I would be, like I'd be like, God, I'd do anything, just get me out of here. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important to kind of note that it does seem to be of a he's thankful that he just didn't die when they tossed him overboard. It's more of like a prayer of thankfulness, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah, I think it's the realization that he should have died,
Yeah.
but God granted him mercy. And obviously, I don't think anybody would expect to be in a fish, or to be in a situation that doesn't make sense. And be like, "Oh, God, you saved me from this." Like we don't we don't expect to be in those situations, but he should have died. The way
Right.
that the sea was being um should have killed him, and God saved him. And so instead of being like, why did you have me in this fish? Like, why didn't you just let me die? Or like all of these other things he could have said, he comes to God with a heart of, you gave me mercy. You saved
Yeah.
me when I didn't deserve to be saved. And it kind of made me laugh a little bit because Jonah running away from God, he's in rebellion. Like he's actively disobeying God.
Yeah.
And he did deserve to die. He deserved a punishment. And God jumped in, saved him, showed him mercy. But that was the very thing he was running away from because he didn't want the Ninevites to feel that mercy. And
Hmm.
so the attitude that he has on this side of that mercy, he
Yeah.
should like he should have put it together. Like the Ninevites, they're gonna feel this. Like this is what they're gonna see too.
Right. Yeah, I don't feel like that's like the irony is lost there at all. Like I think it's fully like I feel like God fully intended for us to glean that from here. Like, like he
Mm-hmm.
is feeling the exact same thing that he did not want them to have, which is
Mm-hmm.
like that mercy and that's like that saved, like being saved,
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that and I mean literally like in my notes I took over verse 2, like he's at his lowest point, it says from the deep in the realm of the dead I called for help and you listened to my cry. And like I wrote like he's literally at his lowest point. Like he's literally like physically he's at the lowest point he's probably ever been, and like he's at a low point, and I just wonder like even like we talked last episode about the side eye towards Jonah, like, jokingly or whatever. But like honestly, like how many times I'm thinking back to some of my lowest points in my life, like when we left ministry, there was no prayers of thankfulness. Like it was just prayers of heartbreak and pouring myself out and asking God why and why did this happen? Why do I have to feel this hurt? Why are we going through this again? Like, but there was no really like thankfulness until God brought us out of that situation. You know what I mean? Like, so I definitely commend him for give him props for that, because like never have I been at my lowest point giving God praise and like thanking him for that. Yeah, I don't know. So
Yeah.
that was a thought I had.
Yeah, I definitely compared myself to Jonah in this part too because when I'm at my lowest as well, like I'm like ugly crying, like I
Oh
can't
yeah.
believe you let this happen, or like why haven't you done this for me yet, or like almost turning it onto God as if it's his fault or something. And like even like for instance, whenever I was out here by myself for a little while, it was, why didn't you send somebody, or why didn't you make this work, or why didn't you do this, or like something like that, instead of being like, Lord, like things could be worse. But
Right.
like even in the middle of this heartbreak and this time, like Jonah said, like I'm going to turn my eyes to you, I'm going to worship you. And I think that as much as we do talk bad about Jonah, like you're right, we do have to give him props because his response to God, like we know because we know the story, like his attitude doesn't really change towards the
Right.
Ninevites, but like his response to God in this moment, he went from rebellion to worship. And
Right.
for me, I go from rebellion to despair to depression to deeper rebellion. And then eventually I make my way to worship, but I have to go through all the things first.
Right.
And so I think that a really good lesson for us to take from Jonah here is to immediately go from rebellion to worship.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that that's such a good point, because it's like when we've been in rebellion, when we're going through like the punishment, it's never like, oh, thank you, God, for this. It's
Mhm.
like we're mad at God for things that like our own decisions brought us. I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. I agree.
So, one of the things that I kind of talked about last week that I said that I kind of wanted to wait for this week, but was just like the controversy over no Jonah either being actually in the fish or actually being dead. And as I was kind of like looking at it, like there's no evidence out there that has me convinced that he was actually dead. Even when Jesus talked about Jonah, he talked about him as if he was in the fish.
Yeah.
And the parts where they use about Jonah, it's whenever he says, from the, well, for NIV, it says, from the deep of the realm of the dead, I cried for help. But he says this before he describes being in the waters. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you hurled me into the depths comes after that. The currents swirled around me. I've been banished from your sight. He talks about the waters threatening me, the deep surrounding me, and the seaweed wrapping around me. Like
Yeah.
all of this stuff happens after he talks about being in the realm of the dead. So I think that it's just a metaphor that he's using right
Yeah.
now, and not so much actually being dead. Um, just based off of how I read it. So like
Yeah.
I can't convince everybody out there to believe what I believe, but like
Right.
I believe that he's literally in a fish, like he's alive, he's in a fish.
Yeah.
Um, just because there's not evidence to suggest enough to me that he's actually dead at this point.
Yeah, no, I don't think that at all. I think it's more of like a metaphor. And like from the deep, it says from deep in the realm of the dead, I called for help. I mean, if you're however many like feet below sea level, I mean, you probably are in the realm of the dead. You know what I mean? Like that's what I would equate that to, you
Yeah.
know? So, yeah, like I think it's a metaphor and maybe like he's not literally dead, but like where he's at physically is
Mm-hmm.
that, you know? Like
And
he's being literal, like,
spiritually,
yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah, because he's like, I ran from you, I'm apart from you. Like that could
Uh,
feel like you're coming back from the dead too.
yeah, I mean, honestly, no, I agree. I think that that's a really good point. And I also think, like, with Jonah, like, I feel like it's maybe one of the books that is the most people are going to go to Jonah to try to, like, say, well, this isn't literal before they go to most of the other stories or books of the Bible. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not necessarily outlandish, but I mean, it kind of is, you know, like it's hard to picture that or like buy into that, especially for people who are very literal, you know, because I mean, he was swallowed by a fish. Like, you do not hear that, you know, like it's
Mm-hmm.
just, it's wild to think about.
Yeah.
But I do want to point out that, like, a lot of, like, especially in this prayer, the way that he worded things, the writings, you know, all of this, it's, you can find some of like very similar type styles in Psalms.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, I think it. Yeah, I think it's just Psalms. I was gonna say Proverbs, but I think it's just Psalms. But like that writing is like on point, so to speak, for like the other times. You know what I mean? Like for the other books that were written around the same time. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
historically, that's a really good. Like you have to look at that.
Yeah. And that's the language that they used for prayers. I mean, we don't
Mm-hmm.
pray that way, so we don't see it like that,
Right.
but that's how they prayed. So
Yeah.
they spoke in metaphors, like Jesus
Mm-hmm.
talked in parables. Like that was
Yeah.
pretty customary for people. And for us, everything is literal. I mean,
Yeah.
even at the school, when we have students write a story, I'll say, use your imagination. It can literally be anything. And I think I've talked about this on here before,
Yeah.
but they can't do it. It has to be something that they've physically seen, and then they
Yeah.
can write about it. But unless it is, they can't. Or like, a bunch of, because I'm in second grade this year, a bunch of our second graders are obsessed with the K-pop Demon Hunters,
Yeah.
the movie. And so the teacher had printed out some pictures for them to color. And I hadn't seen the movie, but they kept asking me, what color are their clothes? What color was their hair? And I'm like, I don't know. I haven't seen it. And I was like, how about you just imagine an outfit? Like you dress
Uh,
them, like make it yours. And they can't. They can't do it at all. And I think that our society has just moved so far away from figurative language
yeah.
that we we can't we can't understand it. Even
Yeah.
like, do you remember reading like Shakespeare and stuff like that? The way that they talked, it was hard to comprehend for us. But it was more poetic.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I think like even to go back to like Genesis, like I know that this is like it's something that's super debated. Was it an actual literal 7 days? Or was it not? And that like then you get into like the whole new earth, old earth, creation is debates. Like I don't want to get into all of that. But like
Mm-hmm.
it's we take everything so literal in art, day and age, and everything is nothing's figurative, nothing is I would argue like even like imaginative is lacking with like the younger generations. Like they don't have to imagine anything because they can type it into AI and AI is going to do it for them. You know what I mean? Like they don't have to like,
Mm-hmm.
but I digress on that. Anyway, but like you get into that with like the creation story, literal or figurative, and I think, I don't know, I don't have an opinion. It has no bearing on my life, honestly. You know what I mean? Like, I believe in God and the gospel, but like, I don't know. It's just like that what you said. Like everything now we take everything so literal, and there's not a whole lot of that figurative language and you know context. I guess.
Mm-hmm. I'm really sorry, guys, if you see a gnat fly across the screen. There's like one that keeps like circling over here.
I saw it. I was like, is that on my side?
No, it's me.
We have them bad here too, and I think it's because of the cows outside. And like I've tried to kill them, but like I don't know where they're coming from.
Yeah, well, the gnats, they don't bother me. There was a little bit of time where they were really bad because I had my plants, but I got it under control, and then now they don't bother me. But I swear, every time we sit down to record, there's one in the vicinity.
Well, that's the first one I've seen. I was like, I was trying not to like let it distract me. Oh no, there is one on my side.
We're
Maybe
both
that is what I
struggling.
see. Anyway, okay, sorry.
Yeah. Okay, so back to Jonah. So when I was looking at Jonah's response to the Lord in chapter in verse 7, it says that when my life was ebbing away, I remembered you, Lord, and my prayer rose to you, to your holy temple. And it took me back to what we were talking about at the very beginning, like his attitude towards what's happening. Like his first response going into the well was to pray. It wasn't to wallow in self pity or cry about how this is so unfair. He didn't even want to go to Nineveh in the first place. Why does he have to go? Like, his first response was prayer. Lord, I know I messed up. I know I deserve death, but thank you
Yeah.
for rescuing me. And then, like, here, he's like, my life was ebbing away, but I remembered you. And the commentary kind of talked about how, like, we do that too, where when life is good, we
Yeah.
don't really need God as much. And those of you who are just listening, I used air quotes on need God because we always need God, right?
Right.
But we act like we don't need God, or like we forget God. We aren't going to him daily. We're not talking to him.
Yeah.
We're not inviting him into our lives as much. But then when the hard times hit, that's typically when we go to God, when we pray to him and we're like, oh shoot, I need to get my life right.
Right.
And so like we kind of do that as well, but we see Jonah here doing that. Like, it's not that he forgot God, um, but he was running away from God. And
Right.
like he realized his mistakes. He came back to God, and his first response was to pray.
Yeah.
And so it says, you remembered me, and my prayer rose to you, to your holy temple. And I think that sometimes we forget, and we kind of talked, me and you earlier, about kind of like feeling separated from God a little bit. And I'm sure Jonah felt super separated from God
Right.
right now. Like he knew he had been rescued by God, but like he was running from God. And I kind of said this last week. I don't know what he was really thinking, but like I don't know if his mindset was, if I get far away enough from him, like he won't see me. But like now he's in a fish's belly. Like I'm wondering, like, does he realize no matter where I'm at, you're going to see me? Like at this
Yeah.
point, like I'm here. This is where I'm at. And because it says you remembered me, like I'm
Yeah.
still here. And so I think that, like, as an encouragement for us, like And the times where we feel super separated from God or when we're going through things, like I have to constantly remind myself, like he's still there, even
Right.
though I don't feel him or I don't feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be with him. That doesn't change the fact that he's still there.
Right. And I think also with Jonah, like to that same point, it's important to know that most of the time that we're feeling like that, and I can't say all of the time, but like I'm in that season right now, like where I just feel like studying is just a struggle for me. Like I'm just not feeling super connected. And I'm looking at my life, and I had texted you that, like I was struggling in that area. And I think what did I say? I've been distracted. I think
Mm-hmm.
is what I told you. And it's true. Like I've been busy. And it's nothing. It's God has not moved away from me. It's
Mm-hmm.
been my actions or my lack of actions that have pulled me into that spot in life. And I know that all I have to do is like clear the stage and lay it down. You know what I mean? Like, and just really
Mm-hmm.
spend that quality time with him. But sometimes it takes a while to get back to that. But I think like with Jonah, it's important. Like, yeah, God was there. God seen him when he was at his lowest, but it was Jonah's actions that put him there. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't know. And that's me. And that's not every case, I don't think. But in my case right now, it's on me. Like God
Mm-hmm.
didn't move away from me. I just got really busy, and that's no excuse at all, but like that's where I'm at.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's why it's important to make study time with God and prayer time a discipline.
Yes.
Because if we go by our feelings are going to go up and
Right.
down, like the water crashing, that it talked about, and I don't know, James, John, one of them talked about water crashing and like being tossed around with the waves. That's what our feelings do though.
They're fickle.
And so that's kind of what I told you earlier was that even like doing this podcast, I wanted to do it because doing this podcast, I have to be in my word. I have to read the Bible.
Yeah.
Even the ministry here, sometimes I teach, like I have to be in my word. So even if I'm feeling separated from God, even if I feel like there's like something there that I'm walking through this, like it still has to be a discipline for me to be in my word and to still pray because while I know he's there and I feel that separation, like I'm still doing ministry. And if I was to go based off of my emotions, then whenever I am at my highs or at my lows, I'm either not going to be in my word
Yeah.
or suffering even more. And so I think remembering that your emotions change dramatically sometimes, up and downs, if you make it a discipline to stay in your word, then not only are you going to get the truth to situations, because sometimes we get in our heads and we make
Right.
things bigger than what they really are, and then you get back to the Bible and you're grounded a little bit, so you're getting the truth of situations, but you're also like still connected to God.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. Can't be like emotionally. I am a person that is very. I can't say I still am, but it has been a struggle for my 30 years to not be emotion led, and I feel every emotion like very extreme. Like if I'm happy, I am like overjoyed. If I'm sad, I can't stay sad. I go straight to like temper. You know what I mean? Like I feel like my emotions very deeply. And that has been a source of struggle for me in my spiritual life because I have let my emotions lead my spiritual life, like you were saying. And like I know like I feel what you're saying because like I have lived it, and it is hard when your emotions aren't feeling it to still try to like have that discipline. Like
Mm-hmm.
I yeah, the discipline is hard.
It
Yeah.
is hard. Yeah. So the next note that I took was on verse 8, where it talks about those who cling to worthless idols turn away from God's love for them.
Mhm.
And I was looking at the Hebrew words for the worthless idols, and worthless was, forgive me for pronouncing this incorrectly, but shawaf, but basically it means emptiness or nothingness and vanity. And then idols was hebel, which is unsubstantial,
Mm.
but basically meaning having no solidity.
Uh-huh.
I don't know how to say that word. Reality or factual basis, having no
Mm.
to little. And so I was thinking about that when we cling to idols, they're not real, right? They're not anything that can help us. There are so many verses in the Bible about idols, but I pulled two of them out. The first one was Psalms 115, 44 through 8, where
Mhm.
it talks about okay.
What was it? Psalms what?
115, 4 through
I
8.
turned right to it. Okay.
It says, "But their idols are silver and gold, made by humans' hands. They have mouths but cannot speak, eyes but cannot see. They have ears but cannot hear, noses but cannot smell. They have hands but cannot feel, feet but cannot walk, nor can they utter a sound with their throats. Those who make them will be like them, and so will all who trust in them." And I was looking at that and I was like, we become what we worship, basically, is what they're saying. Like God sustains us, He takes care of us, He fills us. Um, as Christians, we're growing to be more Christ-like, right? And so if we're walking with the Lord and being with Him and following Him, we're becoming more like Him. But if you're following idols and chasing after things that are not real, that are not sustaining you or filling you, or are empty and full of nothing, then you're going to be that way as well. Like
Yep.
it's said in the Bible that that's a thing. My second one's still there. And then my second verse was 1 Samuel 12:21. And that is where it says, do not turn away after useless idols. They can do you no good, nor can they rescue you because they are useless." And I think in this verse, Jonah is talking to us. I lost my place in Jonah, so it might take me a second to get back
No,
there.
you're
But,
good.
like Jonah's only rescued because he's been following God. He's following somebody who can rescue him.
Right.
Um you know and so if we're turning and clinging to worthless idols with all of our hearts, then god can't sustain us. He can't be there for us. He can't show that mercy and that love because we've turned away from him and clung to things that are worthless, that things that can't actually help us. Anytime we talk about idols, I always think of the story with Elijah, where he's on the mountain and he's like, "Oh, maybe you should yell louder." Like, I always think of that story because it's such a great example of the fact that nothing's going to answer you, nothing's going to help you, nothing's going to save you. And you're spending so much time and dedication to these idols that are all for nothing. There's nothing there. And that even includes ourselves. We turn to ourselves as idols sometimes. But what I've learned is sometimes there's nothing I can do. Like, I
Yeah.
think that I can fix things. I think that I can do all these things. It's like Nemo. You think you can do these things, but you just can't.
No, honestly, I feel like not that like I turn other people into idols, like, but I tend to turn to everyone else for advice or counsel or, whatever before I turn to God. And like, I don't know, as you're thinking that, like, that's just like, or as you were saying that, like, that was what was playing in my mind. Like, he's saying, like, or, you're talking about turning to idols and like them being nothing, and like, that's just kind of not that like advice and counsel isn't good, but like the first thing you have to go to is God, like I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and I just think that, I don't know, in my life for sure, like God has proven over and over and over again who He is
Yeah,
and what He has done and things that He's still doing.
yeah,
And so sometimes I get frustrated with myself because in those moments I'm like, why am I idolizing this? It's not helping me. God's the one that helps me. He's the one that's got me through
Right.
X, Y, and Z. And so I'm just like, how is it that you haven't learned your lesson? Like, I do think I'm better than what I used to be,
Yeah.
but like there's still some times there where I just fall into old patterns and I'm like,
Yeah.
come on, girl.
I think that's like, I kind of took a note over that, and it was just kind of like over Jonah and just like this chapter, like just the story as a whole, but like specifically this chapter. I said, how often do we disobey, then repent only because we have been put in something, a situation that's uncomfortable, or we're unhappy with the results, or, whatever, only to be spit back up and never have a change of heart.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the moment, we're really sorry. In the moment, God, I'm going to change. I'm going to, I'm not going to go back to this again. Like, I just need you to pull me up out of this pit. I need you to do this. Like, can you, God, please? And God does it. And we're spit back up out of that well, and we go right back to whatever behavior. Like, our hearts never fully change.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, like, I kind of wrote that kind of as an overview of that because, I mean, we all know what comes in 3 and 4,
Mm-hmm.
chapters 3 and 4. If you've been in church and you've heard the story, like, we know how Jonah plays out. And so that's just kind of like my note that I took over that. Like, I'm reading this, and like, as you're reading it, like, you do see the remorse. You see him acknowledge what God does for him, and how God saved him. And, at the end of it, and I took a note over this, verse 9, because he vowed to essentially make good on, what God has called him to. He says, but I, with shouts of grateful praise, will sacrifice to you. What I have vowed, I will make good. I will say salvation comes from the Lord. And when he's, it says, and then the Lord commanded the fish, and it vomited Jonah onto dry land. But it was the with shouts of grateful praise will sacrifice to you. What I have vowed, I will make good. And I'm like, and I'm not like dogging on Jonah, I'm just talking like on me as a personal level, like, God, okay, I'll do this. But like, when I come out of that, am I going to have shouts of grateful praise, or is it going to be a begrudging heart? Fine, I guess I'll do this. Like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. I'm almost the opposite. Um, I don't try to like when I'm praying, I'm not like, okay, well I said that I'm gonna do this. This is how
yeah.
it's gonna go. Um, Sometimes I have an attitude of like I'm not going to care, I guess. Let me just give you a for instance. So like one of the biggest prayers that I ever pray is obviously as a single lady to get married. Um, but I was dating a guy one time and I knew pretty quickly I did not want to marry him. And so I was like dealing with all of that. Like I had already broken up with him. And so then I was like, I pray all the time for a husband. I go through all of these things. But then like I knew that guy wasn't the guy that was going to be my husband. And so then I was like, Lord, I guess like cuz in my head it was like I know God wasn't saying this, but in my head it was like, well, I gave you a guy, like you chose to walk away from him. And so
Yeah.
then like in my head I was like, like if it's like him or nothing, like I'll take nothing. But like in reality I care. I care a lot.
Yeah.
And so like I still want a husband, but like in that moment it's like, well, I don't care now. Like I don't need to get married. Like if it's between him or
Yeah.
marriage.
Right.
Like I don't know why I do that. But like that's the route that I take, I guess. Like it to like dissociate, but like I don't
Yeah.
mean it, I guess.
Right. Yeah. No, I completely agree. And we all have like our different ways of like handling those things too.
Mhm.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting how God is the same. God is God, and He is consistent, and He is steadfast, and He is sovereign, and He is just, and He is all these things. But it's so cool that like we all have our own personal relationship with Him.
Mm-hmm.
And like the way that you talk to God and God talks to you and you work through these situations with God is completely different than how I talk to God and God talks to me, and we work through situations, or I work through situations with God. Like I just think that that's so cool. Like just the how he never changes, but each of our relationship is so individual.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I just think that that's really cool. I think it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I didn't take any more notes over like the individual verses. But I think if you're done with individual verses too, now would be a good time for like the question that you brought up earlier
Okay.
today. I don't
So
know. I don't know if there was something else you wanted to talk about.
no, 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 no. That's I really didn't have a lot of notes for this chapter. Like I said earlier, I really struggled with it. But like just an overall arc of Jonah, like an overall, this is something that like I have struggled with, not really struggled with, but I have like in my head, swirled it around for a while. Is essentially the idea and maybe the theology of free will that comes with free will. And, we have free will to follow God, we have free will not to follow God. But then, like, so take Jonah's story, for instance. Jonah is following God, he is a prophet. God calls Jonah to go to this town and, proclaim, which is dangerous. Like, him going there, like, is dangerous. Like, there's no doubt that there was fear behind that. And he doesn't want to go. So he essentially tells God no, and he leaves, like just the gist of the story. But God punishes him, I guess, disciplines him for saying no. And I'm like, in my head, I struggle with, is that really free will? If I tell my kids to clean their room, and if you don't clean your room, then you're going to be grounded or you're going to get a spanking. It's not really free will because they're going to get, punished for not obeying, and then they're gonna have to obey me anyway. You know what I mean? So it's like, to me, this is something that it's not really anything that like messes with like my salvation, or like it doesn't make me rethink those types of things. It just, I struggle with the idea of like true free will, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. I so she hasn't heard my response yet. She texted me like kind of her thoughts, but I
Yeah.
haven't responded. So this is kind of,
Yeah. I want to
you
hear
guys are all
it.
getting kind of what I
Yes, I
think.
want to hear
Um,
it.
so I don't know, because I kind of went a couple of different ways with this because I think there's like many different points that you could probably dissect.
Yeah.
Um, but I kind of started with the moment that we choose to give our lives to God. Like
Mm-hmm.
when we pray to God, we pray, "Come into my life, God. I give you control.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm going to follow you." So like
Right.
we're making a pretty bold statement.
Right.
That's how we've been taught to accept Christ into our lives, right? Is to make
Right.
these pretty bold statements. But do you really mean those bold statements if God's asked you to serve in a certain way and you say, "No, I don't want to do that. I'm not actually following you. You don't actually have control over my life." I think if we surrender or say that we're surrendering ourselves to God and that we want him to use us how he wants to use us, if we are saying those things and then he tries
Yeah.
to use us and we say no and we get punished for it, I think that maybe we didn't believe what we were saying in the first place.
Yeah. Like maybe
But
we didn't completely surrender.
yeah,
Yeah.
or like even in the case of Jonah, like there were consequences for him saying no to God,
Mhm.
but he still got to choose to say no to God. Like he still
Right.
got to go through those consequences. Um and so I think that it's challenging because God doesn't call us to things that are easy
Right.
or things that we want. Um, God calls us to things that are going to grow us because the point of the Christian walk is sanctification. So
Mhm.
he's going to call us to things that are going to grow us. He's going
Right.
to call us to things that reveal what's in our hearts. For Jonah, for instance, God knew Jonah did not want to go to Nineveh. He knew how he felt about the Ninevites before he
Right.
ever called him to Nineveh. And so by calling him to Nineveh, God's revealing the heart of Jonah to
Right.
Jonah to fix it, right? To
Yeah.
show teach him a lesson through it.
Right.
Um or like sometimes he calls us so that we can draw closer to him. Like there's a purpose behind the call, I think.
Right.
And we still have the right to say no. For Jonah, he ended up in a well, or not a well, sorry, a big fish. But like
Yeah.
for us, like let me tell you
Yeah.
this, in which I've told you guys this before. Whenever I was in college, I was to the second to last semester
Mhm.
of my college career, and one of my teachers said, if you do not already have a job lined up after graduation at this point, you're behind. Like you should have already focused on this, you should have a plan in motion. And I started freaking out because I
Right.
had not planned anything. Like my goal was to get through college and then I would figure out the rest later.
Right.
And so I started researching and looking into things just to see what was out there, to see where I wanted to go. And I found this website, which is wild because later I had typed in the same exact prompt that I typed in the first time and could not
Mhm.
find the website. So,
Mm.
like, I found this website. It was for Youth for Christ, and it was like their international branch. And
Yeah.
I fell in love like so fast. Like, I found a job that I was like, that job is for me. Like, I know that job's for me. Like, I know that's what God's calling me to do.
Yeah.
And then I started the application process, but then I got scared and worried because part of it is you have to raise funds to support yourself. Like they don't pay you. You get paid what you raise. And I knew coming out of college I was going to have a ton of debt. And I knew that I needed to pay that back. Like I had to have a plan. And
Yeah.
I was like, how am I going to find a bunch of people to support me enough to where I can pay my bills? And so I was supposed to go to this orientation thing. And before you go to the orientation, you're supposed to have a list of already 10 people pledged to donate to you. And I didn't have that. And so I was like, never mind. I'm not doing this. I don't believe that God is going to provide this money for me. I'm not going to go. And for the next couple of years, like I felt like my life had just not really went in shambles, but like it wasn't right. Like I knew my life wasn't right. Like it was hard, but it's not that it was harder because I think your life is always going to be hard. It's just when you're walking with God in his will, you have his peace and his strength to sustain you.
Right.
And at that moment I was walking outside of God's will, so life was hard just because I wasn't where I was supposed to be, but also because life is just hard. And so
Right.
I think sometimes we think that life goes bad when we don't follow what God's called us to do. But I think life is going to be bad regardless. It's just when you're with God's will, it's not as bad as what it would be when you're outside of God's will. So for
Right.
Jonah, like, yeah, he went into a fish. He had to realize what was going on and then he got thrown up. But like, he could have died.
Right.
So like, he had that free will to leave. He could have died in the storm. That could have been the end of his story. God could have chose somebody else. But I mean, even after coming out of the fish, he could have ran again. Like he still had the free will. I think that there's just consequences to being outside of God's will when we've
Right.
chosen to follow him.
Right. Yeah. I see what you're saying, and I agree, and I like the way that you put that. So essentially, kind of like what I'm leaning towards, and kind of like what I have. Like I said, I've struggled with this for a while. So like, kind of like trying to make heads or tails of it. It's essentially like you have free will to follow God or not to follow God, but it's like you have to be all in, essentially. Like if you're gonna follow him, you follow him. But if you're not, you don't. And it's like that's the free will. Like that's the option. It's not free will once you follow God to do whatever. Like tell God no or whatever. I think for me, and the reason why this whole thing kind of came up is when Chris and I left career ministry. I was so broken. And I completely feel like God has used these years to break me down to, I mean, just to take everything down to the studs. Like I have disentangled all of my theology. I'm still working through things, that I was raised or that, I felt like was indoctrinated into me in Bible college that I don't necessarily agree with now. So that kind of came up when we left career ministry because so many people told Chris and I, well, once God places a calling on your life, he's not going to remove it. God's going to bring you back to the church. God's going to bring you back into career ministry. And that absolutely terrified me. And it broke me because that is the last place that I wanted to be. And it is still the last place that I want to be is in career ministry. I just don't feel like that is where I am a good fit for. But that is another topic for another discussion. But anyway, when people tell me that, I would just be like, it would send me into a state of panic, honestly, because of what we went through at the last couple churches, because I don't want to go back into career ministry. And at that point, I was just like so fearful. Okay, God's going to call us to a church soon. And it's going to be between me following God and being absolutely broken and hating my life because I'm in career ministry again, or it's going to be me telling God no and everything's going to go to shambles, And like, because I grew up believing if you tell God no, essentially everything is going to go to crap. Like, your life's going to fall apart, and this is, your kids are going to, leave the church, and this is going to happen, and this is going to happen if you tell God no. And so it was almost like this fear of, do I go to this church if God calls me and Chris to go back into career ministry and be miserable, or do I tell God no and take the risk on my whole life falling apart, And like, those were my two options, and I don't feel so much stuck in that anymore, but like, that's where like this thought originated from. And it's something that like my grandma always told me, if something like that is causing you to doubt God, then just don't think about it. And so it's something that like I have just not thought about. But like reading Jonah, I'm like, that's I'm not giving that advice to people. Like, you should flesh out like these types of things, and go to scripture and stuff. But like, in the moment, that helped me, and I'm glad I didn't dwell on it back then, because I think it would have driven me away from God. But now, like, reading through Jonah, it's brought that question of, I guess, that whole scenario back up. And that's kind of where it came from today when I texted you about it, because I didn't have a whole lot of notes, and I was just like, this is something that applies to Jonah and something that I have been trying to figure out and disentangle from the way that I was raised, and like, what is the truth to it, So I don't know.
Yeah. I think when it comes to like the kid side of things, like your
Yeah.
kids rebelling, kids
Mhm.
are going to rebel when they see you rebel. If you're going
For
to
sure.
rebel against God, they're going to rebel
They're
too.
gonna know. Yeah.
You know,
That's such a good thing.
you're setting the example for your
Yeah.
children in every single decision that you make,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to Christ. If you show them that a relationship with Christ is fine on Sundays and Wednesdays, but through the week you can do whatever, they're going to follow that. If you
Yeah.
show them that your life is grounded in Christ and every decision you make goes back to Christ, and like he's a part of your everyday life, then they're going to follow that too. So I think if you teach them rebellion, they're going to follow rebellion.
Right.
So I think that that's one aspect of that. But
Yeah.
two, I think that the choices and the feelings that you have right now on career ministry is the hurt that came with it,
Oh, for
and
sure.
maybe a little bit of distrust that if God puts you back in that he's not gonna sustain you in that.
Yeah.
So I think like with Jonah, if God were to call you back to career ministry, like it's gonna be to flesh that out of you, to
Yeah.
show you that he can sustain you, that he's willing to sustain you.
Yeah.
Like it's gonna be to show you in your heart where you're lacking. there
Yeah.
too, like, right? And that's with all of us. Like with me, like
Yeah.
if I had to get donors to, like, if he called me back to that, like
Yeah.
he's gonna have to flush out that trust that I didn't have either.
Yeah.
Because let me tell you, like if I still had to do that, I don't know if that trust would still be there. But here's my thing though. We say that God calls us to stuff. People say that all the time. Like I've said that
Yeah.
like I just said that a while ago.
Yeah.
But and like he does. I'm not saying that he doesn't. But sometimes I think we use that too loosely on
Yeah.
things that we actually want.
Mm-hmm.
Um so like I've never experienced someone telling me, you know, I was terrified to go to South Africa to do this missions trip or something, and I was terrified to go, but I went anyways, and all of these things happened, and like
Yeah.
that. Like, I've only heard people who are interested in a
And
calling
want to do
say,
it.
God's
Yeah.
called me to this.
Yeah.
And so I think that sometimes we throw that term around too loosely. And I think
Right.
that sometimes we also forget that your life as a Christian should be career ministry in some way. Like
Oh,
you
for
should
sure.
be actively in ministry all the time.
Yeah.
And so like I know for you and Chris, you're referring to like being pastors and leaders of a church.
Yes.
But like that doesn't stop you guys from still doing ministry in your
Right.
everyday lives. Like even
Right.
this is a ministry. You could have said no when I asked you to do this. I'm not saying God called you to this,
Yeah.
but like it's not that your heart is against ministry at
Ministry.
all. You don't want to be in the same position that you were in.
Right.
And so I think that, I mean, I don't know if God's going to call you back to that. If he does, then that's a bridge that you're going to have to cross when you get there.
It will be.
But I
Yeah.
think that if we look at it as God's not doing this because he is upset with me or he's trying to punish
Right.
me or something, instead being like, there must be something in my heart that I need to deal with
Yeah.
otherwise, or like there's something that I need to grow in. I think if we look at it through why God calls us to things, we might have a different mindset to the
Yeah.
answer.
No, I completely agree. I think for me, like, yeah, when I say career ministry, I mean like relying on that as a like our full-time job. Like that is like we are paid through that. Like that's, like that's what I mean by career ministry because I do believe like we are still in ministry like where we're at and God is using us and we're so happy where we are right now and we feel very blessed and we do feel like this is where God has us, for the moment. But I definitely feel like if God calls us back to that type of ministry, it's not a distrust in God because like he has been so faithful to us through both transitions of both of the churches that we left when everything should have fallen apart and we should not have been able to pay bills or take care of these things or this things. Like we never went without. Like God always provided and like that trust is there. To me, I mean, if I'm just being 100% like raw and vulnerable, to me the distrust is of God's children, like within the church. Like I struggle with that. I struggle. Like I have never been a closed off person, but the things that I have gone through have made me a very closed off person. And that definitely terrifies me that God's gonna call me back to that. Just to flush that out of me. Like so maybe I need to start being a little bit more open. God, I can work on it here.
If I'm being honest with you, I think that we have church so messed up today that if he did call you back to something like that, I don't think it would be in the lens of the church that we have set up now, or
Yeah.
even in the Free Will Baptist like
No, it
lens,
wouldn't
I
be.
guess.
Yeah.
Like I think that, which I mean, I'm not God. I don't know. I don't know what
Yeah.
he's going to do with you. But like
Right.
because how I've seen the church be today, I think that if God were to, and especially with like how you and Chris have grown, I think that if God were to call you back into leading a church, I think it would be done in a different way than what we've seen with traditional churches.
And I would be very open to that. I wouldn't run from that. I wouldn't head for Tarshish in that. I think I might could handle that, but I don't
I'll jump on here, tell everybody, pray for Danny. She's in the belly right now.
know. She's on a ship somewhere. We're waiting to see how this plays out.
No, I think that we forget that we serve a God who's a good and a loving God,
Yeah.
but he's also a God building our character. Like, for instance, when you talked about your kids cleaning their room, like,
Yeah.
they can either clean it or they can get disciplined and then clean it. You're
Right.
raising your kids to be future adults. They have
Yeah.
to be members of the society, and a part of that is learning to take care of yourself and your surroundings. So with that, like, you're growing your children to be good adults through making them clean their room, making them eat, or making them shower. Like,
Right.
yeah, they can choose not to do it, get disciplined and do it anyways,
Yeah.
but that's life. Like, you have to
Right.
become a good adult. There's too many adults out here who are not good adults.
Right.
And that's what God's doing with us. Like, he's growing us to be who we are meant to be in Christ. He's growing us to be like Jesus. And with that, when he calls us to do something, you can do it or you cannot do it, get disciplined, and still have to do it because it's a
Yes.
part of raising us. And
Yeah.
so I think that, like, ultimately, the free will you got, like, sure, walk away from God. But if you walk away from God and you say no to God, think about, it's like when they tell us to count the cost, right?
Yeah.
You're not
Yeah.
just counting the cost of what God's called you to do, but you're counting the cost of what it means to walk away as well.
Right. Yeah. No, that's good. Good answer. Good. I needed to hear it. I mean, like I said, it's not something that like has hindered my faith or my salvation or like anything like that or hindered my walk. But it is just something that like, reading through Jonah, it has come back up like that question of true free will. And I think it's like the wordage like I get hung up on more so than like the theology behind it. But anyway, yeah, that was
And you're
good.
not the
Thank you.
only one. There's a lot of people out there who say the same thing, but in a much more hateful,
Yeah.
demeaning kind of way.
Yeah.
And I think their thinking is, well, if God, if he's in control of everything, why does this happen? Or why does this happen? Like, we don't actually have free will because if you don't do this, then this happens. But
Yeah.
honestly, like, I mean, God created the entire universe. He created you and me. We are his creation. And if you choose to walk away from him, then you're choosing that life and you're
Yeah.
choosing the consequences that come with that. Like, you
Right.
have the option to follow him if you want it, but if you don't, then you have to deal with both sides of the coin, whichever side you
Yeah.
choose, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's a lot of people who also, not, I don't want to say also because I know that you're
No, no,
not
no. I
like
know what
that,
you
but
mean.
like, there's a lot of people who struggle with free will too,
Yes.
and in Christianity in general.
Yeah. I think Jonah, like, as much as we like joke and we say side eye and things like that, like, Jonah is such a good example of that. Like, Jonah exercising his free will, facing the consequences of his free will, coming to terms with it, but still kind of having like that begrudging attitude, that we are all so guilty of having sometimes. And I don't know. Yeah, yeah, Jonah was just a perfect example of that. And like, it just brought that up today. So I was like, you know what? This might be a, uh, like, what is it? A springboard, jumping board off of,
Diving board.
yeah, diving board off of like a good conversation like to have for this chapter because I struggled to come up with notes and just like commentary and things on this chapter. So I thought that that would be maybe a good thing. So yeah, I'm glad to talk about it.
Me too. So, as you guys go out and read Jonah and his story and think about the things that we've said or the things that you've learned from other people, I really just want you guys to think about your reactions to your own situations, and make it a habit to go to prayer. Sorry, prayer first, and to, this is for me specifically, to have a better attitude, because instead of wallowing in
Oh
self
no.
pity and depression and despair, like, I want to praise God for what he has done and what he is doing. And so maybe like changing your prayers from the despair to thankfulness, like Jonah did here,
Yeah.
whenever he had probably more than most of us the right to be in despair. And so, like, just challenging you to look at your situations and creating a discipline. Don't base your relationship with God off of your emotions, but make it a discipline.
Yep, that's good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for joining us and being here today. We are very excited. We are actually loving this season, I think, and the
Yeah.
conversations that we're having. I know maybe not so much in the audio department because I'm the one that's edited the last few videos, but in the discussion department, I think that we've grown
Yeah, I think so
in
too.
these
Oh,
podcasts, and I hope that you guys are growing with us. So I think that we just get really excited about that, and we are so grateful for those of you who listen to every single episode and who tell us in person or through messages or on the videos what you think. We are really grateful for you guys.
yeah.
Yeah, so we will see you next week on Jonah Chapter 3.